morning, Rodney. I love you. And to whoever's watching this, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I like to believe it's not just in my area. I read today's Just for Today, surrendering self-will. Surrender. I had to surrender to the idea that I'm going to always be an addict my whole life. My son once asked me, why do you say that in every meeting? Isn't that just reminding you that you're on drugs? It is a reminder of what I am. I'm always going to be that. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be on drugs. It just means that I'm always going to be when I take my life as a whole, and I look back, I've always had this way of thinking that when I did it long enough, and I believed certain things long enough, my actions weren't the greatest, to say it lightly. Surrendering my self-will over has given me the ability to, at one point, for the most part, kind of get, like for sure, I got a couple years clean. 2 years, 3 months, and 3 weeks to be exact. I don't know how many days in that. 3 weeks for sure. And I still lived a certain way. I wasn't completely surrendering. It wasn't until these last 10 months and 24 days that I completely, humbly, as much as I could at least, surrendered. And that never stays the same for me. Well, I shouldn't say never. I shouldn't speak in definites. It usually doesn't stay the same for me given time. What ends up happening is I can be clean, and then I can take a situation and say, this is my higher power. And when I really think about it, how much of it is my higher power? How much of it is my own will? When I look at all the chaos in my life, most of it, I won't speak in definites, when I look at most of the chaos in my life, was it driven by self-will? Now, here's the kicker. Everything happens exactly the way my higher power intended it to for me. I don't control other people. I don't control places. And I don't control things. I play a part in them, and due to my bad behaviors, character defects, or whatever you may say, that part creates chaos as well in other people's lives, in other areas, in other things. But when I go back to when it's chaotic enough, and I say, okay, I need to turn this over, things start to get better for me. They get different, then they get better. Why could I not stop using? See, in the last couple of videos, I have talked about how I just didn't choose to, and I didn't. That was my will. It had nothing to do with that was God's will, and that's why I was getting loaded. No, that was my will. When I think about it, if I had the ability to just say, I'm going to turn my life and my will over, and then that's that, I wouldn't be here, not doing these videos. And so, it's a constant reminder that I have to turn my life and my will over. It doesn't mean that it ends for me now. And now it's just going to be boring and all that. Here's what I will say. For anybody watching this, maybe you're new to this recovery thing. Maybe you're not in recovery. And maybe you're just trying to figure out how you could get out of your head so much. You don't have to be a recovering drug addict to be stuck in your head all the time. When I turn my life and my will over, when I do that, it's a practice. It gives me the ability to then use some spiritual principles that I've learned, like acceptance, like faith. That gives me the ability to persevere, overcome adversity. I'll give you an example of a situation that's currently happening for me. I got a letter from the HOA that the grass on the side of my house is too dry and the weeds are too heavy. I woke up to that. Not the letter, the thought of it. It was taken over. I was stressing out over it. I thought of all these situations. And then I thought, man, I should have fucking watered it a long time ago. And I started beating myself up. And then I thought, well, how the hell am I going to get it fucking green by the time, there's going to be a charge if I don't get it right within 20 days of that letter, which was a few days ago. So I'm stressing over it. I went out and I got to get ready for work. So I went outside and I started pulling weeds. And I thought to myself, man, if I do this long enough, I won't make it to work. What am I going to call in and tell them that I have to get the weeds out? How quick today am I going to get that lawn green and good? It ain't going to happen. So I looked up and said, okay, I know what I need to do. Help me do it little by little. And I turn this over to you. And then I stopped tripping. And then I reached out to somebody and said, hey, can you help me with this? And then hopefully I'll be able to go to Home Depot or wherever and get some weed killer instead of just sitting out there pulling them all. I'll pull them, but I'll get that spray thing that goes with the water, and I'll water it today and tomorrow and the next day. I got the letter in the mail yesterday. Can't do anything in 24 hours to fix that. But by turning that over, it stopped me from beating on myself. All of a sudden, I shouldn't have done this, and I shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have done this. Yes, I needed to do those things. And then I was able to say, everything is happening exactly the way it was intended. I do my best to not go into making a bad decision with that thought process. But I do say that everything will happen the way it's going to happen. There's a phrase, they call it Murphy's Law. For the longest time, my whole life, I always thought everything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's not the phrase. At least I've heard recently. It's everything that can go will go. That's wrong or good. Everything's going to happen exactly the way it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Now that doesn't give me admission to just sit around and do nothing. When I look back at all the work that I put in so far in this short period of time, a lot of good things have happened. If I would have just sat around, I'd still be in the same situation. I had to do a lot of action, and it all started with surrender. I had to surrender to stop trying to save my face and start saving my ass, because you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. I tried doing that. It hasn't worked my whole life. So surrendering my self-will and then turning my life and my will over to the care of something out there, whether you believe in God, the moon, the stars, the sun, doesn't matter to me. What works for me works for me. What works for you will work for you. Doing nothing is doing something. And has that worked too well? It didn't for me. When I do nothing, I complain the most. And I hate complaining, contrary to popular belief. I don't like anger. I don't like fear. I don't like arguments. I don't mind being competitive. And I find myself doing a lot of those things I said I don't like. So, how do I resolve those things? Well, one, I don't fix them overnight. Two, it's going to always be a constant for me. That's the whole addict mentality for me, is that I'm going to resort to anger, usually. I'm going to resort to fear, usually. I'm going to resort to acting out like a shithead, usually. But if I continue to practice this on a regular basis, I won't do it as much, and I won't do it for as long as I used to do it. And then hopefully one day I can be that guy. I was talking to my friend about this, where there's a story of a guy, he's talking to a pastor, and his orange juice gets tipped over and it lands all over his laptop. And it just like, his laptop turns off. And he grabs a towel, wipes the top of it, pushes it to the side, and they continue their conversation. And within like a minute or two, the pastor interrupts the conversation and says, "Man, how are you not just going crazy right now about that?" And he looked at him calmly and cool, and he said, "Well, it's just a thing. It's just a thing." And then they continue their conversation. And that pastor thought about that for a long time, and then he did a sermon on it, saying that how many things are just a thing? How much am I gonna, I was reading this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And in that book, he writes that in this lifetime, you only have a certain amount of fucks to give. You've got this certain amount of them. And are we just gonna use all of them all at once? How many times do we spend our lives giving a fuck so much? Me, personally, I gave a fuck about everything. That's because I tend to not always do my best. Let me rephrase this. I try best not to be, not be impeccable with my word. That's to myself and to others. Take things personally, assume everything, and not do my best. Those 4 principles right there. It's a book called The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. Really did change my life. It helped me get to a certain point in my life, and then I was able to I'm able to always think about, I read it twice, I listened to it on audio on YouTube. You can listen to it for free on YouTube. It's really a short listen and it's a short read, but it's a great philosophy. But I don't have to base my life on just that philosophy. I can do other things that I learn. I'm constantly growing. But for me, it all starts with surrendering my self-will. If I knew best, I wouldn't be here. Accepting that I don't know best gives me the ability to ask for help. See, if I think I know best, like if my thought process and I believe that I know best, and I'm out there getting loaded all the time, I don't know best. Here's the thing. I speak only on behalf of if you don't want to get loaded anymore. I didn't want to get loaded anymore. If somebody's out there and it's working for them and they're able to do everything and function and their life isn't unmanageable, sure, there's a mild chaos going on, but they're able to manage it. You know, what do they call that? A functioning addict? So be it. I used to say there's no such thing as a functioning addict. I don't even know why I need to say that. That doesn't need to be said. What if I find one and all of a sudden I'm super jealous because they get to and I don't? I've gotten loaded over that. It's not fair she gets to get loaded and I don't. I've said that. So I have to always focus on my will, myself. Stay on my side of the street. I'm so busy looking at everybody else's side of the street that my grass is all fucking brown. You know? Focus on mine. What can I do today? It's very important for me. What can I do today? Can I turn it green all today? If I could do that, if I could buy something to do that, then they would too, and they wouldn't be watering like they do, where I'm sitting there watching people water their lawn and I'm not. Sometimes it takes me a letter from an HOA to realize that I need to do this. That's the definition of me being an addict in some cases. That's part of it. I need to learn the hard way. I need to get told by my boss that if I'm late again, I'm going to get written up instead of just not being late. I need to hear that. I need to be told by my kids that why is it that you're not going to eat any of that stuff, but you're going to give them to the kids. I need to be told, you know what I mean? I can go on forever, and I've been saying these things throughout it. I've got, 34 days and I'll have 1 year, and yet I need to be told these things. I need to learn the hard way. See, but maybe I can say this. I need to turn my life and my will over a lot more often. And then maybe I won't have to learn the hard way all the time. But it's going to take practice. You can't walk into the woods 100 feet and think you're going to get out in 20. I remember the first time I went into treatment, I got out and everybody's supposed to fucking already just be good with me. The second time, for some people, they'll never be good with me. They'll never trust me. For others, I'll get 20% of their trust back. And 20% is much better than none. And for some, they'll love me. And while I'm doing this living amends, they'll let me back in. I don't need to know the percentage of trust that I've got back. I may have burned that trust completely. I can accept that. I made that bet. I can accept that. That's a turning it over to my higher power situation. With every relapsed, never turned it over to my higher power. I just beat myself up and said, fuck man, why did I do this again? How could I? Why would I? I know I don't like how this feels. I knew I didn't like how this was going to feel when I got loaded. I knew it. That was the anxiety of getting loaded. And then something in my head just switched. And then all of a sudden I blocked that section out until I got loaded. And all of a sudden I'm spending most of that time beating on myself. And it was this cycle I knew over and over again it was going to happen. That created this level of unmanageability that's unexplainable if you haven't lived through it. But if you have lived through it, then you and I are the same. Whether you have 1 day clean, 20 years clean, 1 week clean, sober. I had to focus on the similarities, not the differences. How do I do all of these things? How do I process all this? It all starts with surrendering my self-will over. So, today's going to be a good day. It may not. But I'll wait till the end of the day and how it all transpires to then surrender that. But I give my higher power everything. The good, the bad, the ugly. I give it to him. Or them, or her, whatever it is. For you, whatever you believe. But if I don't have a higher power, I can't surrender it over. And if I'm not surrendering it over to a higher power, then I'm just going to live in my self-will, which hasn't worked for me for a long time. Even if it looked like on the surface for people that know me, that have known me for a long time, oh yeah, he was good. I wasn't good. I just seemed good. There's a difference between seeming good and being good. And today, I'm better. I've done a really good job at bitter versus better and switching those letters over. So, you got this, you have what it takes, and I love you. Give yourself a hug. And tell yourself it's going to be okay. It's just going to be rough for a little bit. And that rough is going to make everything worthwhile. Bye.